Okay. Yes, we're recording. Okay, cool. So welcome to another installment of Exploring Consciousness with MG. I'm Martina Grubmüller. I'm a transformation teacher. And the theme for today's installment is we're going to talk about entities. And I've got Laura Massey joining me for today, my very good mentorship friend. And Laura is a Reiki practitioner, and she's a modern day shaman too, and she's running workshops in West Sussex and in London. And I'm particularly excited. Hi, Laura. Can you hear me?
Hi, Martina.
Okay.
Hi.
I'm particularly excited to talk with you about entities because we've both come actually to the work of entities through a very different way. And I was just wondering, before we go into the story, because I really want you to tell us the story and, a little bit around all that. But before we go into that, I just want to give a little definition, a very, very simple definition of what entities actually are. And the simplest definition is really, it's a defined energy. Any entity that is defined is an entity. And it could be an entity with or without bodies, a living or not living. So, for instance, a book is an entity too. Any consciousness, any energy that is defined. Now, there's pretty much three things we usually do with entities, which is the clearing. And, I think we can do quite a few actually Zooms on that because entities is such a huge topic. But clearing is the one thing, and I think we're going to focus on that today. And then, of course, you got the communication and you got the contribution, from the entities and to the entities. So that's I wanna just kick it off with that, and then actually go and have you tell us the story. What do entities mean to you? How did you come about them, and that?
Well, when I use the term entity, it does have a negative connotation because we're looking at a form of energy that's come in your field somewhere that isn't there in your best interest and isn't there to do you good, and you don't want it there. Whether it's in your field or somebody else's who's in 1 degree of separation from you, your family, people like that. And that is my experience of entities. I'm not going to sit here and say all entities are bad. In my experience, and I've had about to deal with over half a dozen of them now, is some of them are lost. They range from those that are simple, you could say, house hauntings, where they come in and bang the doors. They want their presence felt. So those are those stuck in the astral realms that haven't passed on properly, that are coming back seeking probably the home they used to live in, people they might have lived with. They're lost. So and then you can go from that sort of entities to some really quite very negative ones that are here to cause a lot of harm when they actually get into people's field, right in. And that can happen through all sorts of ways. It happened to me. And so I'm able to talk, I've had several ranges in between, so I'm able to draw an experience of that and how to deal with them. And I've just had to learn how to deal with them along the way myself, with seeking advice and doing what I felt was right. And then when I was particularly badly hit, which was this time last year, I was sort of wiped out for about 3 months, and I sought some very professional shamanic help. And I was able to come through it. So at least I'm sat here talking about something from experience.
Yes. And this is why, I brought you on. Again, I just want to say one thing, and as you said it before, not every entity is a negative entity. Anything, you are an entity, I'm an entity, a project can be an entity, and an angelic being can be an entity too. But let's kick it off with your story. You can actually, and also what we're going to do with all these things, what we're doing here is to also give some tools and raise some awareness of what's actually possible and how we can also take away the myth of what an entity is, and let people know that, the biggest entity is always you.
Yes.
So it's really a matter of, you can kick some ass here, because it's all about stepping into your potency.
Yeah.
Yes. And let's go with your story to see how you've actually done that, because that's exactly what your experience has invited you to do, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So it started off with my mum. Now, my mum had about 3 nervous breakdowns. Her mother died when she was 10. So she had a pretty dreadful background, brought up by a stepmother. Very difficult, and she started to become very difficult even in her childhood years, and this it got exacerbated when she married Dad, and she would start throwing things, biting, kicking, throwing food up the wall. I mean, we often had quite a distressed house, which I grew up in for the first 6 years. And then Mum and Dad separated and we went separate ways. But she was always difficult. She would always be fine one minute, not the next. Now, of course, what happened was, this was in the early 60s, they sent her away to a mental hospital where they gave her all sorts of drugs and electrolysis and the generally not nice treatment.
Which is usually making it worse, right?
Totally made it worse. Of course, she was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and as we know from this, that the voices in the head are voices in the head, not her voices. So so she had to go through all that, and then I pick up the story much later. I'm talking about probably about 3 years ago, and I sought advice again from a great shaman to find out what exactly was going on. And it turns out she was being haunted. And he said to me, think of them as wild kids on the block misbehaving. These are not nasty entities. Because what I would say to anybody going in doing this, know what you are dealing with. Do not take on something that you don't know what you are dealing with. So if you can't find that out yourself, and I'm learning to do that now myself, I can start to recognize different entities. But if you can't do that yourself, seek the knowledge and wisdom of somebody who can, because you don't know what you're dealing with, and there can be some very nasty outcomes, as I know. Now, I'm not wanting to put fear in people. I'm being sensible. We have a level of responsibility of shaman for ourselves, because we don't want to be spreading this.
Yeah. Is it okay, Laura, if I just stop you when somebody pops in? Yeah. What I want to say here is, and you mentioned the anger. Yeah. So people now starting to think, okay, so how do I know, is it an entity or not? Very often it is the anger. Very often when you meet somebody, you are with somebody who has this huge anger tantrums. Yeah, it's always a good question to ask for yourself. Is just ask the question: is that an entity? Is there an entity involved with that? And then just work with your awareness. And if you do get a yes, then explore a bit further. And if you don't have any tools, there are lots and lots of very, very simple tools out there to start off with, to clear them. And if you don't have those tools, then, as Laura says, find somebody who has those tools. But anger is often a very good indicator, that there are entities involved. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'd go so far as to say rage.
Yes, fury, hate, all that very dense sort of hate and fury and anger energy.
But all the heavy stuff. So I started to, so I was armed with this knowledge, and then what to do with Mum. And part of it was she had been sleeping in the same house for nearly 60 years with a 4-foot round mirror next to her bed. Now, shamanically, we believe entities come in through mirrors, or at the very least, they reflect negative energy within that room. So the negative entities had a huge portal to her dream time. And she had probably almost made friends. She'd got used to these coming in and out. She wasn't particularly having disturbed sleep. And once my parents were divorced and she was on her own, although she was difficult, the entities had no playthings until family turned up, and then we'd have the stomping of the feet if something didn't go her way, stroppiness, all sorts of things. The throwing got less. This is the point I stepped in, and I knew Mum wasn't right. And I was having a conversation with her, and she got stroppy. And I thought, I'm not having this, really. So I looked into her eyes, and I could see it was not her. I could just tell. And I said, you need to leave, whoever you are, and I want my mum back. And after a while, Mum sort of turned her head away and looked up, and Mum came back. She was there.
Yeah.
And things like that, fine.
Yeah, I want to stop you right there, because you just gave a tool here. Yeah. It's like, you got to leave, go back to whence you came from and never return to this body again, you know? So most of that work is actually awareness. And good on you knowing that, okay, that's not my mom, what the hell, you know, get out. And that's just stepping into that power of yourself and say, you get up now. That already made that difference, and she came back. So that's fantastic.
Well, you know, a little trick I use is to try and visualize them. Because the thing, people don't understand this, because they don't realize there's an unseen world and the effect it has on us. So until you realize and believe there's an unseen world that actually has an effect on us, it's very difficult to actually do something about it. So first of all, you have to believe that. So you've got to realize it's there and it affects you day in, day out. Then for me, this little trick I say is, I sort of see them, and I saw these naughty teenagers, and I said, you don't belong here. I'm challenging you. I want my mum back in her body where she belongs. That was the start of the work. Then we go into much more shamanic stuff, which works. And this is saging. So I would take Mum aside, and we'd fill the room quite thickly with sage. And it was fine, because she was very receptive of this. So
that's an important point here. When you do want to do work with entities and other people, you need to get permission from the people who actually are carrying the entities, because otherwise you're stepping on the sovereignty of those people.
To invoke some calming yourself.
There's usually a contractual obligation between the person and the entity. And I'm coming from a facilitator perspective, and that's why I always work with the person, say, okay, so you're going to clear them. We do it together with your permission. But you talk about spiritual hygiene now. So, you know, what can we actually do when the person is receptive? So this is great. Yeah, let's give a couple of tips of that.
Well, saging is a big one. And the nastier the entity, the rule is really the thicker the saging. So that, I mean, I've actually got a very small downstairs bathroom, like a cupboard. And if I feel particularly that I need it, or with others I've helped, I shut them in there with a burning sage stick for a few minutes, and then open the door afterwards. You can do the whole house as well, I would, and so make sure all the doors and windows are shut. If you've got a fireplace, to burn a few sage sticks in, if it's particularly bad with children and so on. Let that burn away and the whole house fill up. Turn off the smoke alarms, because I found that you can't do it with smoke alarms on. And let it fill up, and then open one window. Now, if the window if when the smoke goes out the window, it's very yellow, that's entity. You know it's still there.
Okay, so that's a good thing to look for.
Yeah, the colour of the smoke.
Yeah, we got that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, and then open all the doors and windows and get it all cleared. I mean, saging is just one thing. One thing I'm going to mention here is you do get resistance from the people who have entities in them to doing any work at all, whether it's crystals, Reiki, saging. To me, that's the entity speaking. They are not going to want their plaything taken away, because remember, they're getting energy, they're having fun, they're living through this person vicariously for whatever reason.
Yeah,
whether
yeah.
their energy, they want to experience life still.
Yeah.
So that resistance to me shows that there is work to be done, but you might have to get another way.
There's another resistance there. What I'm finding too is, which comes from the place that entities can sometimes be a contribution to the person. Okay? Because, you know, when we talk about potency, to really taking responsibility for one's life is not an easy task.
No.
So very often there's a value, and it's not an awareness that people have when they are contracting entities. It's very often, you know, they might be small kids feeling powerless or something. So it's almost like they're inviting a playmate in. Yeah? I know how your mom actually contracted them. Yeah. You know, the difficulty, or through abuse, be that non-verbal, sexual, you know, mental abuse, that type of stuff. And then it becomes almost like a blanket, a security blanket too, but it's so disempowering at the same time. And then, as you said early on, if there is no awareness of the unseen world, nobody really thinks, oh,
so,
I invited in and now I can't get rid of it, or I don't know, you know, that type of stuff. So it's a bit of a conundrum there, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, it becomes familiar, and people like things they feel comfortable in.
Familiarity, that's
good. It was my mum. So, and then, of course, what happens is people almost accept that behaviour around them. Oh, well, you know what she's like. You know, that's your mum. Yeah. But as you say, when you've got some awareness, you can feel quite strongly about it, that this isn't right. My mum's a sovereign being. She needs to claim her sovereignty. Yeah. Which leads me on to the next thing, of course, very importantly, is revocations. Now we know.
Explain that a little bit for people who don't know what a revocation is.
A revocation basically is we have contracts made in small print when we come in. There's contracts and there's small print contracts. So the major contracts are maybe something we need to learn in life, that we've decided with our soul family before we come in, what we're going to work out. You know, I'm going to be pretty nasty to you so that you learn to be self-empowered and stand up to me, things like that. Then there's very small print contracts that what we call the system of domination and control puts on you as you come in your unawareness. And it's something called tacit agreement. Basically, you don't read the small print because you can't wait to get to Earth to help out. So, or any other way, you know, you just, the small print is there to control you and to give you maybe not such a good life, so that they can have more domination over you. So we've got the major contract and then the small print, and most people, including me, aren't aware of the small print on their contracts, are they? So
I gotta read mine. I have no idea. I never read contracts. I better do.
I mean, is that a good description of it, Martina? Would you?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I'm always weary not to put the fear of God into people, because at the end of the day, it's all choice, you know. And you would now say, okay, so why would I choose to be riddled with entities or having to? Because at the end of the day, people who have capacities with entities, are usually very capable of dealing with them.
Yeah.
Just like you. I mean, you know, you didn't know anything about entities, and you just had stepped into it. So, and it's very often a way where we are proving to ourselves or teaching ourselves how amazing, we actually are.
How powerful we are.
How powerful we are. So I always want to point that out, So whatever we have contracted out, we have contracted it out because we are able to deal with it. And this is the time now to step into that potency and say, I am taking the mantle of responsibility. And, my body is my body, and everybody else get the hell out of here.
Absolutely.
No longer for rent signs on our bodies. So, this is where all this grounding business comes in, And the more we're going to bring our soul shards in and our soul parts and avatars, we need to make sure that our bodies are clean, just like we're taking a shower on a daily basis. So a lot of that entity work, I'm really, really so excited about that, because it's pretty much every single one has to look at that.
Yes.
Perspective.
I think
thanks for sharing your story with us, and let's hope that somebody looks at that and listens to it and finds, inspiration and advice and help to actually do something about that.
I think, this is the leading on from the small print in the contracts is what
yes.
we're for. So we're actually saying, no, we don't agree in tacit consent. We're not doing this. And reading that, there's lots of them out there on the internet to get. Martina will have some, I've got loads. Reading those is very powerful, because we've had how many thousands, millions of years of overlaying, of imprinting. So they're not something you read just once. You actually, read them many, many, many times, write your own. You're basically saying, no, you don't want this. You don't want this. It's not part of you as a sovereign being.
Yeah.
So,
in addition to that, is when you read those revocations, always read them from a place of empowerment, not a place of fear. Yeah. So we're not doing that because we're afraid of anything, because fear is one of those, little distractor implants or big distractor implants in this reality. There's no such thing as fear, but we're doing it from a place of empowerment. This has to stop.
Yeah.
And all those revocations are actually worded in very high frequency words. And, I do not consent to this bullshit anymore. It doesn't. Yes, that's my.
Totally agree.
But, that type of stuff, this has to stop,
So I just want to mention a couple more tools. So
yes.
Patience, yes. Saging, yes. Challenging, yes, if you know what you're challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Salt baths, mega important.
Salt baths.
A couple of handfuls of rock salt. You don't have to use Himalayan. Just Epsom salts, good quality rock salt in the bath. Stay there, ideally till the water turns cold, about 45 minutes, at least 25 minutes. If you want to read your revocations in the bath, even better. To start with, depending on, it's a basic spiritual hygiene to me. I do it probably every other night, 3 times a week. For my mum, it was a challenge because she was quite infirm, and I had to get her in her first bath she'd had for years. At how old was she? 88. But I got her in the bath, and I was also able to submerge her head. So we got the salt round her crown chakra as well, and she stayed there for half an hour. And I know that helped a lot.
That's a very good point, actually. I never do that. Must actually, the head needs to go too, of course.
I do, yeah.
I've never done that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Always shower afterwards.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah.
And then also have a shower afterwards, because the salt is actually very, very itchy afterwards. I got my daughter actually to take a bath, and then she said, "Oh, Mama, I'm so itchy." And I said, "Did you not have a shower?"
Yeah.
No. So yes.
Well, so it works both ways. So the toxin pulls out toxins from the body, so you want to wash those away.
Yes.
I mean, it is known actually as a beauty treatment.
Yes.
If you don't have a bath, get a little tub of salt scrub. which you can buy chemist all over the place. It's usually granules of salt in oil. And rub that and go in all the crevices and then rinse it all off. And your skin feels lovely afterwards anyway, but it's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So salt bath, another great treatment for people who are haunted like this is craniosacral therapy. And I took Mum for craniosacral therapy probably twice a month. It's probably roughly about £50 for an hour's treatment. But that really started connecting her brain to her tailbone, getting all the synapses joined together. It's a wonderful, wonderful treatment, and online will describe to you far better than I can what it is, how that is. The other thing is I got her to recall all her joyful moments, because many times she would sit there crying, recalling my dad, recalling her childhood, not the happy things, moaning. And so, we try and pick on happy moments. Let's get some joy in this. Because in the end, joy outcreates everything. So if you can stay in joy or get into joy with these things, that's not the frequencies that the entities like either. So once you start creating this sort of setup, and crystals play a huge part in this. I use pyrite, black tourmaline, pink tourmaline, quartz, any of those, the four corners of the bed. So I was putting them under her mattress, the four corners, having said prayers over them, having put in protections for them into the crystals, imprinting into the crystals, having got my mum to actually say some words into the even if it was repeat after me, that's fine. It's coming as her vibration.
That's right.
Box. Very important. All the time getting her agreement. So we protected her bedroom, her bed. We protect the bedroom in the same way with a crystal. You can also do the house and you can do the land. And if you want to get really shamanic, you can boil chicken bones on a stove and say the revocations over these, freeze them in little pots or use them as a ladleful, four corners of the land outside the front door. There's so many things you can do. You can
so the soup, you're actually not eating the soup, you're putting the soup inside into the corner.
It's not for your consumption. You say the prayer over it. I used to have the soup bubbling away, candles around the stove. You can get quite witchy with it, and sit there and read my about half a dozen revocations and then put in my own. I've done that for my own land, for my own protection. For Mum, we did the crystals. And the other thing is salt, a handful of salt in the sheets, in the bed sheets, because a lot of this happens in the dream world. So it's, it's in your bed. So when you change the sheets, and for Mum, I try to change them sort of every 4 days in the beginning, certainly no longer than a week, and just a handful of salt in the washing machine, or you use your soap powders, but a handful of, again, rock salt in the washing machine. That clears away a lot of the spiritual entity residue that is collected. But I mean, that's in general. I do that now.
Well, I would always advise people to use their discernment, really use their own discernment for these are just, we can just give recommendations and things that work for us, and then obviously say to them, if you think that you want to change the sheets every day or just once a week, then that's entirely up to you. So how long did you say, how long did it take for your mum to actually improve? How many years are we talking here?
Well,
or how long?
She was, when I started work on her, she was probably 87, 88, and she's 90, but it only took 6 months. I couldn't believe it. I think I started in October, and about April I was seeing a change.
So that's amazing. So 6 months, and pretty much her entire life has been,
hell, actually. Her life has been awful, and for those around her, it's been dreadful. Just dealing with her, which of course isn't her. And
Yeah.
now I have started to see it. I can see it in others. So when people are doing something that is particularly nasty or out of character maybe, or you just get a feel for it after a while. But as I say, that there's so many sort of different types. You know, my son had a house where it was haunted basically, and he created a golden door, and so that the entity could go through the golden door out. And he just said, you know, you don't live here anymore, you need to move on. And he did that in one night. So this, you know, there's so many different types that we're dealing with. So that was Mum, and she's now, you know, a lovely sweet old lady. And one wishes one could have done this at the beginning of her life, but this was my journey and her journey, and it gave me the experience, the shamanic experience, to take me forward to deal with others. So that was
and also I think the question needs to be asked, would she have been willing to look at that before? You know, there's always a time when we say, you know, the time is right, and because that work can only be done in cooperation with the person, you know. So it's one of those things. And I think that's a good question, actually. When you do come across people and you have an awareness that there's something going on, don't just walk in and say, okay, I'm going to clear everything, and, you know. No. Because it actually can backfire onto you.
I mean, I was okay being her daughter, same DNA lineage, you know, the grandmother's line. So I and great love, of course, it's my mum.
Yes.
But I mean, this is always to be done from a position of joy and unconditional love. You know, you and I probably have both dealt with entities for quite a while now, and I endeavour to say go with love. Yeah.
Well, this is what I love about your experience there, because you come from this unbiased compassion and love. For me, I've always come more from the empowerment level, because I've never really had those rough sort of experiences. I've come in as a facilitator straight away, and only realizing that I had the capacity with entities. So I come more from an empowerment, you know, perspective. And I always ask the question, so is this a contribution to that person if I introduce them to that concept? And from my perspective, just to add something, because, you know, like kids, for instance, they come home from school, and you can rest assured that, you know, when they come home and they are angry, it's a breeding ground. Hospitals, schools, anything public, tubes in London, you know, it's a breeding ground, you know. So it's something, you don't have to go to a nasty concert or, you know, weird witchy places to pick them up. They're just everywhere, because they're just entities. They're a bit denser, you know, than others. And then it depends also on how aware, how sensitive are we and stuff like that. So you can do certain clearings, you know. So when you have this real anger, and you can just say in your mind's eye, go back to whence you came from and never come back to this body again. Say it a couple of times, and it might really dissipate, you know, it might fizzle out. And then, of course, if it doesn't, then there is something a bit more, a different approach required, where you really start addressing the person, say, look, you've got to start dealing with that, you know. Or you just remove yourself. You know, if you have an awareness that this is a place where this is just too freaky for me, just walk away, you know.
Oh, yeah, I would. If you don't really know what it is, do, because I've had so much kickback from different entities, you know, in my dream world.
Let's talk a little bit about the kickback. Let's talk about that. What can people expect? I mean, not that we're setting them up for expectations here, but what awareness can
look like?
Yeah, what does it look like to
For me, definitely solar plexus, discomfort, pain in the shoulders and the neck. And then there's varying degrees of that. So for ones I can probably handle quite well, I just feel that sluggishness. It's like your energy's being drained.
Yeah,
I feel
energy, tiredness
around me. And then for me, when it got really bad, when my father was in hospital and I was going every other day, an hour's drive to see him, and then my mum was in hospital and then my partner was in hospital, 2 different hospitals, all the visits, I wore myself out. So first of all, you know, don't be a martyr, don't wear yourself down, which makes you susceptible. So having put myself in that susceptibility, I then started to get, as I say, the solar plexus pain and so on. So that for me is the first sign that it's around me, that it's there. And then nightmares of varying degrees again, some that you can just dismiss, others that you think, that really wasn't nice, I really need to do something about that, which it will be the saging the next day and revocations and so on in the bedroom particularly. What other signs have I had? Then it got very, very bad with my dad because I picked up on his dream world. And I'm talking quite fearful. I didn't want the sun to set. I thought the sun wouldn't rise again. I mean, that is not me. So legs like jelly. I could barely walk some days, barely eat. Just almost in fear, like I was running continually from something. I'd run home from hospital, I'd drive home, get in, say to my partner, oh, I don't feel well, run upstairs, get into bed. The most acute form of anxiety. I thought I was anxious. I went to the doctor. I've got the anti-acid pills, which made me feel worse, so I didn't take them because I think I knew that I needed more help than that. Doctors can't give you help from this because they don't recognise it. So extreme anxiousness, try and fall asleep, leap out of bed, didn't know where to go. I would get some relief from a salt bath. But of course, once the entities have you in that state where they're feeding off you in dream time, all that way, all just by making you fearful and liking that energy, you don't think straight. So all these things I'm telling you to do almost went out my head. It's like I've just thought about the salt bath, and it took me days to get round to finally shutting myself in the room and saging myself. I was just telling myself I was worn out, I was, picked up a bug, and I was trying all other ways other than this. I'm not saying don't check for that, because I've also had bronchitis and pneumonia and not gone to the doctors.
Yes,
and that was
yes.
So always, check all that first.
Yeah.
But those are the varying stages that one goes through. And I got suicidal. I got up one night, went out. I didn't know what to do with myself. I couldn't sleep. I felt chased from my bed. I went out into the garden and hugged a tree, but that was no better. And that's when I sought a shaman's help. And he was able to pull out actually all the cords that had been attached to me. And I had some pretty nasty cords. Then I had to do the work myself, which was actually with fire. I actually had to sort out mine with using fire. But that's a very shamanic thing.
Doing fire ceremonies and
ceremony and the actual pulling the energy out myself over 3 days. And colonic is another very good thing. Colonics are very good. But I, again, don't, be careful what you do. Leave 36 hours at least between any sort of treatments, whether it's a massage and then a ceremony, because I went in bang, 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 one after the other. I did the 3 fire ceremonies, felt better, decided I'd go for a colonic the next afternoon and put myself into trauma. My body it was already detoxing from the entity, and then I went and had a colonic. which most times I would recommend, anything, have a colonic. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Put me into trauma, because my body had already been through so much, had so much of my core energy drained, and you don't want to lose that core energy that keeps you solid, that keeps you behind your heart. Don't lose that. Don't ever give that away. I've learned now not to. So it took me months to come back from a self-created trauma. Which the entities had caused me the original trauma, and then I added to it in my unknowingness.
So what you're saying is, Laura, that awareness plays a big part there, and staying in the question, asking, always, first of all, is this an entity? And if you get, it's difficult to explain what awareness is like. It's just something you need to start playing with. So when you go through, like, it's a physical symptom, right? Who thinks entity when you have a tummy ache or something? But just the one question to ask, truth, are there entities involved? And you get a little bit, maybe, whatever that is, but maybe it's not just because I've eaten this. Then that's already an indication where you can actually start trusting yourself. Okay, cool. So what can I do with that now? And then you can start with whatever, resonates with you. Be that now the salt bath, be that now the sage stick, be that now just a clearing, get the hell out of here, and stuff like that. There's so many things. But just getting into that level of awareness that there is stuff out there that we haven't been taught in school, and it's not going to go away. It's actually going to get increased now, because the veils are lifting, the energies are changing. We're really starting to connect more and more with the unseen world, and just be curious about it. And as you said something so important. Have some fun with it. Because if you go into depression, regression, and all this negativity, you're really becoming a beacon of, it's not light, darkness almost, that attracts that.
But it's food, your food.
Yummy
to them. That's
great. Well, it sounds so scary. I don't like that. It sounds so scary. But, think about it. It's just something, that's why depression is, or medication, all of that, or addictions, if we drink too much, every time you numbing your awareness, where you almost like you're taking yourself out of your body, you're not taking care of yourself, you're going into too much judgment. That's another thing. If you're constantly negative, this and this attracts all that. And this is where you said gratitude is so important, because gratitude and focusing on the joy and the bliss and the happiness actually counters all of that. So that's really, really important to look at it from that perspective, and not from a place of fear, but from a place of awareness.
Totally.
Sovereignty, totally. Responsibility. Just looking after ourselves,
Well, hey, look, I've been to the most fearful place I think there is, as far as
but that's why, when I heard initially when you said, I'm thinking, oh my God, wow. But you're not the only one, and this is why you get that out there, because you turn it around. Jesus, 6 months for your mum, and she's like, what, 87? You said, this is amazing. This is amazing, and it's possible.
It's possible, and with yourself too. It's absolutely. I just have there's certain places now, as we were saying, I won't put myself into. One is lifts. I won't go in lifts.
Okay.
I don't like the stairwells of multi-story car parks. I don't like tunnels. I don't like public loos. And in fact, I will use a nature bathroom more if I can than a public loo, even in town, if that's possible. That's me. That's just what I found. I'd be perfectly fine now if I had to use them, and I do have to use them. But it just seems to me the sort of places that they like to hang out and attach onto. And they will come home with you in the car, and especially like I was doing the route to and from the hospital a lot, I was bringing them home with me as well, which brings us back to protection of your house. But, you know, they're not all like the ones I've described with that. That was the other end. Some just, you know, go through your house and touch something and make it rattle. And they're not there to do you any harm. They're confused. The others there, yes, they want your energy. You know, and if you put yourself out there sometimes in unawareness and not protected, they might just think, yeah, you know, we can get some nice energy from you to keep us going.
Yeah.
So
when you clear those energies, when you clear those entities, those dense energies, you were saying with the sage stick, you can sometimes perceive, you know, the light being, it's more yellowish as the air goes out the window. What else can we give people that gives them a sort of an awareness, a confirmation that what they're doing is actually working, other than, of course, you know, they're feeling better, they're starting to more in their joy, feeling more potent, feeling more out there doing things.
Changing behavior. So you're
changing the behavior, yes. So the behavioral patterns are changing.
Yes, less aggression.
Yeah.
And depending again on the type of entity.
Yes. Body odor, I find body odor changes.
Yes.
And again, it varies, obviously. It varies very much. And also, I mean, another thing is, again, from an empowerment perspective, is always, you know, ask your bodies, because we all perceive entities in a different way. Like you were saying, you can see them. I don't get a visual of the entities. I'm not clairvoyant, but I am actually, I just know there's something going on. I can't, you know, maybe sometimes smell, you know, but that type of stuff. So it's a discernment, but my body is quite interesting. My body is also through pain, through intensities, like you said, you know, I mean, all my life I've been bloated and, you know, always having issues with my belly, and that was all entities, and I had no idea. I was in and out of hospitals, you know, for that. But I had no idea that I was perceiving entities, you know, that type of stuff. But now it's subtler, you know, if I have the yawning, for me, it's yawning very often when I go somewhere and there's a lot going on. It's almost like my body is actually dissipating them, transmuting, alchemizing, that type of stuff, changing the frequency, So sneezing.
Repelling.
So, you know, or the hair stands up, you know, or I get itchy head, you know, when there's a lot of entity activity. And again, doesn't have to be nasty, just like people. Not every entity is nasty and not every entity is nice. So it's almost like people, you know, there are assholes out there and there are nice ones too, you know. So even when I work with star brothers, sisters, you know, angelic beings and stuff like that, I get the itchy head and stuff like that, you know. So it's quite interesting. I've written down something else because that's actually runny nose for me.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Get a lot of that.
Yeah.
When there's a lot of dense energy around, and that's something we need to find out for ourselves. So work with your bodies. You know, ask the body the question: how do you perceive entities? And then, obviously, it is a bit of an exploration that takes some time. You know, and then write it down. Get yourself a journal. Maybe that's a good one of writing things down, starting to write down your dreams and all that type of stuff.
Oh, listen to your body. I mean, I didn't listen to my body. You know, you've got to, what's it telling you? You know, your body is your experience instrument here isn't it?
And it starts with asking the body, right? Who asks the body?
Yes.
And, you know, it's a practice. Like, get up in the morning, says the body what you want to wear, what you want to eat, what you want to drink. Do you want to have sex with this guy or not? Or, you know, and start with that. And then you know, the body will start communicating more and more and more. And it can be actually quite fun, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you never feel lonely again, because all of a sudden you've got, oh, let's talk. We have a chat, you know? So it's actually, it's quite good fun.
And I think the other thing I would just say is I've also had to learn to dumb this down a bit, in terms of, you can start thinking that everybody's haunted. If you're not careful, you can start thinking, like I was saying, I won't go in lifts and so on. Well, I avoid them, but I don't want to get extreme about this. You start, somebody's got dark circles under their eyes. It doesn't mean they're an entity necessarily. But it is one of the signs, particularly in children. If they've got really dark circles, which children shouldn't have, that's a disturbed sleep time. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason they're being disturbed. So, but I just have to be careful now, not to jump to conclusions about it.
Yes, very, very important. No conclusions, no point of view, just really, and this is the thing, judgment creates. So really looking at what is. And we've gone far beyond the old light worker trap of, everything is positive, and everything is good. And if you have good thoughts, no, that's bullshit. Okay, we know that. But saying that, but what we're saying as well is stay out of judgment. Use your discernment, use what you know, and work with that. Is this something I should get myself into or not?
Yeah,
use the body again. Does this feel light or does this feel heavy? Is it a contribution for me or is this not? And really starting to develop and cultivate that trust within yourself.
Yes, and don't, for me, I had to tell myself, don't go looking for it, as I was saying. Don't expect it to be there. And it's not always you who has to deal with it. Don't step on another's journey. If you're asked, or if it's your family, and they accept it, because you naturally, as a healer or someone who facilitates healing, you naturally want to try and help those in your family first. But you can't voice this on them.
Big mistake. It can work though, like it did in your case. Yes.
Yeah, you can only do so much. If it's grandchildren, then yes, there is, as long as you get the parents' permission. I mean, just be very careful and be very kind. And I agree with you. No amount of love was going to get rid of these entities from me. No, I'm not that powerful. I think that takes a particular sort of person just to deal in the love frequency. That was not going to get rid of those from me. It needed a sacred neutral perspective, and I was too far down to do it myself. But now I would be able to help others. And I would be able to pick up some of the different types. But life is a continual learning process.
Absolutely.
I love about it. And I've had quite a few experiences with them. No doubt I'll have some more, and no doubt there'll be some, and I have done. I've said I'm not getting involved in that. That's not what I need in my life. I'm not a ghost hunter, I'm not a house clearer, but if anyone does come to me, I can equip them with the tools and knowledge.
Absolutely.
Whether they carry it through is up to them, because you do get people coming back saying, this hasn't happened. Well, do it. Do the revocation. Don't just do them once.
Absolutely.
This works if you're disciplined.
Yeah. And also
you by yourself to do it. It works.
Yeah. Well, and also, it is an individual awakening, if you want to, call it awakening, whatever. It is an individual empowerment. We all have to step into our own potency here. And, as you said, martyrdom, this is old paradigm stuff, you know. I don't even call this helping anymore. We're not even here to help. We are here to share our experiences through our true authentic expression. If anybody wants to hear it, you know, then that's great, you know.
Yeah.
And if not,
let it roll by you.
So it's a bit like what we're doing here, exploring consciousness. We're doing it because I love chatting to you, and I thought, might as well just put it on a Zoom, you know. And if anybody wants to listen to it, if anybody wants to obviously get in touch with Laura or myself to discuss anything that came up for you guys, or have some tools or have some sessions, then do let us know too.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, brilliant.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we leave it at that. There is so much more we can talk about, and we'll probably do another one at some stage. I know your story is much bigger, but I also want to, you know, always give lots and lots of tools for people to really start working with it right away. I'm a bit of, come on, let's take action. Let's do some stuff. So thanks so much for sharing with us and for being with me. And I look forward to chatting to you again.
Yeah, bye, darling. Thanks very much.
Cheers, Abe. Bye.
Bye.